play anything, I do think that we will. There it is. There's a handshake. We have liftoff, and we have a CARO KANN.
Wow, a CARO KANN. So it's gonna be knight f6? Yes, knight f6. Yeah, I could only imagine Magnus going for this. Jan goes for takes, and bishop e3. Knight a6 played. Wow, elegant way of developing the knight. Also teasing, yeah, please take, because then suddenly there was a queen a5 check, and you recapture the bishop like this.
And that means because of queen a5 check, black can also play bishop f5 here. This is a thematic idea that you can try to trade light square bishops because of queen a5 check.
Yeah, wow. It's very nice. Yeah, bishop f5. So it's not only queen a5 check against bishop takes a6, but also there is this idea trading the light squared bishops.
The geometry is beautiful for Magnus Carlsen, but the clock situation, not so great thus far. Jan Nepomniachtchi at 3 minutes, 9 seconds. Magnus is the one spending his time, and he's on the move. He plays rook to e8.
Yeah, castles bishop g4. So Magnus says, no, I don't necessarily want to trade pieces. He's pinning the knight on e2. On the other hand, for example, after h3, where is this bishop going? Okay, Jan does not even want to ask that question. Queen d2, knight c7, c4, occupying the center, making sure that black's knight is unable to reach the beautiful outpost on d5.
But we talked about this in a game earlier. When you push c4, you could leave the d4 pawn in some trouble. So look at Magnus. He voluntarily takes this knight on e2, and Jan hasn't recaptured back, at least not yet. He takes with the bishop and f5. Here comes the black queen.
Yes, this is the whole idea behind that. Suddenly black has dangerous threats. Eventually f5, f4 also now already it's a threat because of the hanging bishop on e2. Is white gonna play g3, but then also there are ideas like just sacrificing the pawn, destroying white's pawn structure.
I know it pained you to say the move g3, and it hurt me as well. I mean, g3, f4 for sure from the black side. You rip open the white king because the bishop on e2 is loose. So for Jan Nepomniachtchi, he's now the one spending quite a lot of time. And I think that there have been results in some of the other games. I'll just quickly mention Arjun Erigaisi against Vladislav Artemiev, a draw without a fight. Nihal Sarin against Neil Dubov, a draw without a fight. Shakir Mamadjarov.
But hang on, sorry to interrupt, but it wasn't bishop takes c5 an option? Wasn't it a blunder, c5? Oh my gosh.
It looked like a miss there from Magnus Carlsen. Bishop takes c5, take on d2, the bishop on e2 is loose.
Crazy. It's tiredness, everything, but okay, the game is on. We don't have time to analyze that position too much. There's also not much to talk about. It was a one-move tactic, which could have maybe won the game for Magnus.
And it also explains some of the quick draws in the other boards. They're exhausted. They're hungry. It's like 10 p.m. in Uzbekistan, so the delays, the appeals, all of this stuff have been unfavorable for the players, but these two are still fighting. So there's a knight on d5, nicely centralized. The bishop on f6 aiming at d4, but as you're pointing out, a bishop for white can plant itself on d6 if black does not take it on f4.
Yeah, and what a big miss by Magnus. And now we see that he might be in for some trouble. If white plays the move bishop d6, then white will be able to eliminate that knight on d5, and black is forced to capture with the pawn. That's a terrible strategical position. White will have the majority of the queen side. And how do you stop that? If you take on f4, then after queen takes f4, white will play b4, eventually push d4, d5, and again he has an extra pawn on the queen side.
This looks really nice for Jan Nepomniachtchi. So it was a blunder that turned into a good position. Queen e7 from Magnus, giving up the f5 pawn. He likely just wants to play rook d8 next, target this d4 pawn that's actually quite difficult to defend. I really love these kind of Magnus moments. Queen e7, most of us would play g6 to defend the pawn f5. He instead plays queen e7 to connect his rooks and bring it to d8.
Yes, but Jan was not interested in picking up that f5 pawn. It was much more important to protect the c5 pawn in order to be able to break black's construction. d5, it's a wonderful situation to be in. Jan is also up on the clock with like 40 seconds. But Magnus will be putting up incredible resistance. After all, it's opposite colored bishop's position with very good drawing chances.
That's true, especially if the material gets off the board. But for now, with opposite color bishops, you can get an attack going, and the black king, it's safe, but the f7 pawn's under threat. And b5, c6, white can actually create a pass pawn very quickly. I like the alpha zero, though, on the king side.
Yes, h5, h4, Magnus is looking for counterplay. It's very important to signal to your opponent that it's not going to be a one-way traffic. Yeah, I'm creating chances. By playing h2, h4, eventually white will have to watch out for a well-timed f5, f4, breaking the kingside pawn structure.
And I saw Jan's king go up to g2, and the rook on d1 is very important because if the queen moves from c4, black might play f4, and queen e5 perhaps signals that f4 is an idea just to break down the pawn structure on the king side.
Yes, and I think bishop f3 is a nice stabilizing move, making sure that I control everything, and this pin and status quo unclear situation on the d file was not to Jan's liking. Now he goes b5, goes for your idea. He wants to push c6.
Huge trouble, I would say, for Magnus Carlsen. Unless he can get all these pieces off the board, he is worse. I see rook d4 is on our board, and now we see Magnus play it on the camera. Great move. You need to trade off these pieces.
Yes, you need to. Yeah, the endgame will be unpleasant. White is completely risk-free, but black has very good chances. The big question is queen d4, bishop d4, and afterwards rook c1, c6. You don't want to put the rook to c7. It would be way too passive. I'm guessing then some timely bishop b6 will be the answer.
And I think that black can flick in the move f4 at some moment because black's double pawns aren't helping. But if black can get f4 and try to create a weakness, there will be a chance to go after some of white's pawns. When we see the pawn push forward to c6, a trade will happen. The bishop will slide back to b6. Peter, it looks like Magnus does have things under control now.
Yes, exactly. This was the setup I was looking for, that how can black be sure that he is safe. This looks like a very drawish construction.
And so if Magnus Carlsen can avoid that c-pawn pushing any further, he will have everything completely under control. And he's getting his rook active. Is he potentially trying to play rook c5, rook c2 at some moment?
Wow, but that's quite a risky strategy. I thought that he will just play rook e7.
Oh, and isn't f7 dropping? But if f7 is captured, c6 falls. So Magnus giving up f7. He's also ahead on time. Suddenly it's Jan down to 15 seconds.
Yeah, but what Magnus is doing is very risky. If f7 falls the g6 pawn, clearly bishop takes f7 is met by rook c2.
Oh.
Rook c2, be careful. A draw offer, probably a draw offer with bishop f7.
Yeah, because bishop takes f7, rook takes c6, and the position is completely level. We see that both players had some inaccuracies. They made some mistakes, and for Magnus missing bishop takes c. Look at this. They're talking about it.
Yes.
c5, bishop takes
Exactly.
c5. Oh!
Exactly. This is what they are talking about, because the point was that black was starting to play f4 and the bishop on e2 was hanging. So Jan was spending a lot of time. It looked like he found the solution to it, but no, crazy.
And that was earlier on in the game, but it was a one-move mistake. And when Magnus didn't capitalize, Jan Nepomuceno was able to get the better side of this draw.